Why do once thriving churches hit rock bottom? We're going to explore that today on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew. All right, AJ, we're talking about once thriving churches hitting rock bottom, kind of this death spiral, and it can happen for a lot of different reasons. This is the Church Revitalization Podcast, though, and so we're going to be talking about how you can identify some of these causes, so maybe you can notice them early on. And we're going to be talking a little bit about solutions to these common problems.
Yes, indeed. There's a myriad of things. And I know a lot of churches probably would look back in retrospect and say, well, this was death by 1,000 paper cuts, as they say. But a lot of these things group together into some overarching themes. And we see a lot of these in our experience in working with churches. So yeah, kind of grouped those into a handful of major topics that you might, I hope not, but if you're listening to this, maybe you will identify with a few of these things. And as you know, with any disease, catching it earlier is always better. It makes the treatment.
Prevention is the best medicine, right?
Well, that's even better, yes. But if you have identified a disease in your church, the earlier you catch it, usually the less time it takes and the less painful it is to try to course correct, if you will.
Yeah, and you know what? That's kind of one of the ironies of these things. I think it's when we're dealing with churches, is trying to convince them you should make the investment in change when the cost of change is lower. And very often the instinct in churches is to go, well, things are not that bad. So they don't want to pay any cost for change because things aren't that bad. It's like, no, you're not understanding. When the cost is minimal, that's when you should make the change or make the adjustment. Don't wait. If you wait until it's a crisis, until you're in a death spiral, it's not that it's necessarily too late. It may be, but it's just going to hurt a lot more. And so it's a hard sell to churches. It's like, just trust us. Don't wait till things are terrible.
Yeah. And there's multiple things that play into the cost. I mean, it's not simply a money thing. You know, there's relationship costs and there's time costs. There's a lot of costs that go into revitalizing a church. If you're in North America, there's a monetary cost for the churches that we work with, but we don't charge more for the church that is on death's door than we do the one that is like, you know what, we're maybe not in the best shape and we need some help. That's the same financial investment. But when you are at death's door, your finances are probably there with you. So it might hurt more at that point. But now for churches outside the United States, outside North America, our ministry covers those costs for you through donors. But
I'm glad you clarified. I really meant other kinds of costs, not just financial costs, and specifically not even financial costs related to working with an outsider. You can have, I've seen this financial protectionism. This is actually, I don't think it's one of our points, but so I'll just mention it here. I sometimes will call this the fiscal death spiral with churches, where they won't make critical investments in things that are necessary. And not just not when working with us, but just other kinds of things. And then which fuels actually decline more, which makes them more afraid to spend money, which, makes them not spend an investment, which then they lose even more and decline more. And so they just hit this sort of fiscal death spiral where they're not making strategic investments. And the same is true. It's not, like you said, not just with money, but relational investments and other kinds of kingdom investments that really pay dividends and making sure your church is staying fruitful. So we're going to dive into these things today.
Yep. There we go. Okay. The first one we're going to talk about is infrastructure issues, building problems, maintenance issues, deferred maintenance. I've mentioned this mysterious church in my local area in other podcasts, but every time I think about maintenance problems and just the outward look of a church in decline, I think of this one particular church that we just drive by frequently, that it usually goes a long time before the grass gets cut and the bushes get overgrown, and it just looks sad from the outside. And once you're looking sad on the outside, you're probably even sadder and tireder and further down the spiral on the inside.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes, I mean, I've gone to a number of churches. I can think of a couple right off the top of my head that I've worked with, that they did such a poor job on exterior maintenance that I had a certain expectation, and then I walked inside and I thought, oh, this is nice. Like, oh, it's nice inside.
Really? All right. Well, cool. Yeah, that's good.
But I was like, maybe let's make the outside communicate how things are going on in the inside.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes, yeah. Now, so were they actually like not cutting the grass, or was it just kind of an old looking building that you're like surprised how good things are on the inside?
I don't want to run the risk of really like putting anyone on blast necessarily. So I'm going to try to be
it's a fairly generic conversation.
The condition of the parking lot.
Yeah.
Or just some general outside maintenance items that maybe do cost a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And so it's easy to punt on them. It's easy to defer on those because because there's a big investment. But on the inside, they've done a good job of taking care of things. So again, I'm trying to be careful because I don't want to. Hey, any church that this has been a situation with, I've very likely said to them, "Hey, wow, the inside really doesn't match the outside." I'm always very blunt with churches, but I don't want to put anybody on blast on a podcast that goes.
Well, I mean, I've had those too. Yeah, I've had those too. Where the architecture, maybe it's built in the '60s or something, and it kind of looks like it's from the '60s. A lot of these, you can't do anything about a lot of that.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about things that are fixable, maintenance issues.
Okay. All right.
Like the sign isn't painted. The parking lot has huge cracks and holes in it. Like these kinds of things that are maintenance related, not building style related. I don't pay hardly any attention to that. And I actually don't think most people do. I don't think that even a guest is thinking, oh, that building looks old. I don't think that's something that they care about. If it looks like it's falling apart, that's not related to its style.
Right. Yeah. Right. You could have maybe dated architecture, but you can tell this has been kept nice. They're doing the best with it. Regardless, it's a less likely scenario though, Scott, is a thriving church that's growing and they're neglecting the exterior.
Oh, that's totally true. And so, in these instances I'm thinking of, this was very much the situation where I'm going, hey, you have invested on the inside, but it's almost like a physical manifestation of the challenge here. You're only caring about the inside, and you're not noticing that
nice connection.
That people outside, what they see is what they drive past. And you don't want to be a whitewashed tomb, like you don't want to have it looking nice on the outside, but there's nothing happening in terms of discipleship. But you also, a little bit of whitewash isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world if the building's falling apart.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. And I guess maybe with a little bit more detail, there's plenty of scenarios where the finances have started to decline. And then they're like, well, let's limp by another year on this air conditioner, or we can keep the bucket in the kitchen to catch the drip because, it was going to be a $20,000 repair or a $200,000 roof. That's the scenario that is evident in the downward cycle. And though finances sometimes trail attendance decline, that's not uncommon. That finances are kind of stay at a certain level, maybe
one
for
of the
a few
last
years.
things to go, usually.
Yeah. Which sometimes that's when you're definitely on the downward slope. But yeah, the deferred maintenance, that's a big problem. That's definitely a big symptom.
Yeah, so key solution is to just put together a little task force of some handymen in your church and some strategic thinkers in your church. Like I would maybe be good on a team like that for my visioning skill, but not for my handy skill. And you can put together a master plan. I think sometimes when people hear master plan, they think expansions and additions and things like that. But part of that master plan can also be deferred maintenance things. When are we going to replace these, this roof, the HVAC, and then just start saving for those things. I would just, I would recommend that you do a mix of high visibility things and also sort of invisible but necessary things. So try to intersperse those things so that no one is going to see that you replace the roof or the HVAC.
Yeah.
But you may need to do that. So budget, and when you're doing the HVAC project, budget $2,000 or $3,000 to repaint the lobby. So that's something that's relatively inexpensive, but it's a visible thing that people can go, oh, the lobby looks fresh. Or, when you're redoing the roof, restripe the parking lot, things that are relatively less expensive, but are more visible, and people can point to that. That can also help to fund these things. People don't want to fund a roof, but they will happily fund a lobby remodel. So lump those things together and say, we're going to remodel the lobby and repair the roof, and here's the overall costs, and let people fund that.
Yeah. And get those estimates done. Find out what real costs are, not just what you're afraid it might be.
Exactly.
They might end up being the same. The real number might be what you're afraid it's going to be, but you should have facts. Plan with facts, not with fear. All right. Our second one, Scott, is a lack of community engagement and outreach efforts. Very, very, very common that we see this. This is that inward focus. We mentioned it even on the previous point, but it's just this move away from, really, it's the move away from the core of what the church is supposed to be doing, making and maturing disciples of Jesus. And all of a sudden we're just kind of like, well, how about we maintain some disciples? Is that okay? And no, we're supposed to be outside doing more than that.
I love thinking what if that was the Great Commission. Go maintain disciples.
Stay home and maintain the disciples. That's all I'm really asking here.
Actually, yeah, don't go. Just stay, huddle up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the functional Great Commission in so many churches. Yeah, I think we talked about this, or I should say, I talked about this a couple of episodes ago when you were in Mexico and I was on my own. This idea of one of the reasons why churches don't grow is because they are afraid or unable or unwilling to do the work of figuring out what are the actual needs in our actual community, rather than just the hypothetical needs that we think, that we kind of assume about our community. And so you have a blueprint in your mind of like what outreach looks like, whether that be, a soup kitchen or a homeless ministry or a food pantry or whatever it is. But those may be good things, and they may be serving some people, but is it the greatest need in your community that your church has the ability to affect? And if it's not that, then you probably need to reorient yourself around serving the greatest need that your church has the ability to impact, even if that means having to lay off the gas on something that is a good thing, but just not the most impactful thing, as hard as that might be. You only have so much time and resources and all of this. You need to be investing that in the place where there's the greatest amount of need.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of churches that are just doing the same thing that the church down the street is doing. Um, and it might make you feel good, but is it really having the impact that maybe something else might have?
The lack of creativity is disturbing. It's like,
yeah.
Do you actually know these people? Do you know what they need? Have you talked to them? Do you know what they're thinking? Do you know what they're feeling? You know, you gotta, we say this all the time to churches. Like, you gotta pretend, if your church got picked up and set down in the middle of Tanzania, you would definitely start going around and asking and figuring out what are the needs in Tanzania. You wouldn't assume you know it. Likewise, your church in 2023 is not the same as it was in 1983, the location. And so you have to put those missionary eyes on and start looking around. What are the actual needs? How can we meet them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. The missionary comparison, I mean, if God called you to a place, the passion that you would have to reach that place is
plug that book you posted about yesterday on Facebook.
On my shelf. I'll have to all right, I'll grab it here in a second. Love Your City by Jacob Bloomberg, my friend from Hanoi, Vietnam, has had an amazing impact in the city of Hanoi. Hey, I guarantee you, if you're in
and he's
North
not
America,
Vietnamese, right? Isn't he
he's
like
not Vietnamese?
He's like Dutch or something?
He's Dutch. And he's seen an amazing transformation in Hanoi in how they're able to relate to the city, how they're able to serve the city, and it's had a complete change in the relationships that they have with police and government officials. So if you can do,
if you didn't know this, like you've not paid attention, still a communist country. Yeah. Soft communist, I think now, like maybe diet communist by communist standards.
Yeah. I mean, they started this in 2011, 2012. So it wasn't yesterday. It's been a long time going, but year by year, these things change. So, in fact, I'll put a link to the book in today's show notes that you can read, and we'll give you that link here at the end of the episode.
Good. Yeah. All right, let's move on to number 3.
This one is the lack of guest focus and assimilating guests into the congregation in an easy way. But yeah, this is more of that inward focus. If churches, there's going to come a point in which it's going to be an extremely rare occurrence when a guest walks into your church, if you're on a downward spiral scenario. So if you're in a position where you are still seeing even a handful of guests per month, you need to get real serious about how we relate to those people when they come in, because it'll be very obvious to a guest that you were not prepared for their arrival once you've moved away from that being your focus. And it should be your focus. That should be a really big deal on any particular Sunday. The way to reach a city is not by sitting around waiting for them to come to you. But even then, if we're thinking, will anybody come to us, and we're not ready to receive them, then wow, you've really, thrown that gift out. So because that is not the norm anymore. So I'm not saying this so that you'll go, hey, everybody, let's really rally up and, let's put all of our energy into being guest ready so that we can pounce on the one person that might show up next week. That's not what we're saying. And it definitely shouldn't be energy that is removed from the previous point that you would spend outside the church reaching the community. But we just have to be prepared. I mean, imagine you're a public entity. Your doors are unlocked. They're open. You've posted when you're there, and you've basically said, we'd like you to come. Imagine you did that at your house, for awaiting a guest to arrive that you had been preparing for, and they get there and, well, first of all, the door could actually be locked. That's happened. Scott pulled on some locked doors before. You're like, what? Aren't we here? So let's make sure the front door's unlocked. And then, they walk in and the place is a wreck, or you're sitting on the couch watching TV. Oh, you're here. Okay. Well, great. I guess here, let me throw these books on the ground. You can sit over here on that seat. I know we're ready. We want to offer them refreshment. We want to have conversation. We want to get to know them. We want to laugh with them. We want to do whatever, the plan was. You wouldn't do that at home. Don't do it at church. Don't be the church that acts that way. But there's a lot of them out there. You might think it's not you even, but do a self-assessment on this one, and see, and invite somebody maybe that that doesn't attend your church to come see and help you see whether you are the church that isn't really caring for guests anymore. But oh gosh, we have had episodes on this, Scott. We can go on.
We have, and yeah, and I'll say this. I was recently in a church. Church leader said, when people come to this church, they need to get a handshake, a word, and a smile. Which is a nice sentiment. It's a good place to start.
Great start. Yeah.
It's not enough. Mm-hmm. That might be enough for someone to feel welcomed in the moment, but you need a system. If you don't have a system, people are getting... How many people have come to your church? Not you, AJ, your church. I'm saying, listener, how many people have come to your church, visited your church, and then you don't know what happened to them? They came one time, 2 times, 3 times. Can you tell me what happened to them? At what point in the process did they fall off? Why? What happened? Can you tell? Do you know? If you don't have good answers to those questions, you don't have a system. Being friendly isn't enough. Mm-hmm. It's not. And most churches go, we're friendly. I'm telling you, that's like the bare minimum prerequisite. If you want to stave off decline, you need more than friendliness. In a world where everyone is just totally busy and you are not top of mind in their life, you need more than friendliness to make a genuine relational connection. And I want to emphasize this, AJ, before we move on. Some people will hear that and they'll go, that sounds so cold. I'm telling you, the systems facilitate relationship. You can have an organic process all you want, but you're not connecting with people right now, or it's all on your pastor, and so there's a ceiling to how much can actually happen because everything has to run through 1 or 2 people. That's not sustainable. That's not scalable. So you need a system that facilitates real relationship. Friendliness is, I don't even know if I'd call it the bare minimum. It's just nowhere close to enough. And I think most churches think we're friendly, which may not even be true. But even if it is, it's insufficient.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and it either stops there, or they've got their guest card and they say, hey, fill out the guest card, and that's then the end of their system. So a lot more.
I got really irritated, by the way. I have some sort of a relationship with this particular church, and I just got very irritated when I heard that as like a brag, like this is our approach, and I'm like, it's so far away from being a complete thing, and the results are manifest. Why are you bragging about this? It's not working. Sorry, rant over. Probably should have kept that to myself.
Passion. It's passion. All right, our next point is leadership stagnation, leadership burnout. And I always feel like we need to do this. We use the term leadership very broadly, and for good reason, but we're talking about any level of leadership in the church, from any volunteer position in the church. If you have stepped up and said, yes, I want to help out, you're a leader. And there's levels of leadership in the church, but that's what we're talking about here. So whenever you hear leadership stagnation, maybe it's not just your discipleship pastor or your senior pastor or the lady that answers the phones. They might be stagnant and burned out as well, but it could happen at any place in the church. And when it does, it, that's just one of those sometimes unspoken things that, not to get mix Christianity with New Age, but you can pick up on that vibe, right? I mean, you just get a sense. You're like, these people, their heart is just not in it. And that comes from a variety of ways. One of the most common or biggest ones is that nobody else is helping carry the load. It's just too few people engaged to build each other up, to just carry the load of the church, the body of Christ, many parts working together. And so without a system for getting people into the right place, helping them to understand whether they're doing a good job or not, giving them the resources to grow and to excel, finding reward from things that are going well and improving, having ways to move up, in as their gifting and talent and experience would allow for. These are all aspects that go into maintaining a vibrant leadership structure. And it is very, very easy to just let these things go. Volunteers don't get treated very well a lot of times. It's just, we just beat the heck out of them. And then we wonder, because other people are witness to that also. And those people have friends, the ones that do have a heart and they engage, they're still talking to their friends, like how hard it is. That's not the sales pitch you want. That's not the advertisement for getting involved in the church, is the way your existing volunteers are like, oh my gosh, this is such a beatdown. But that's fully controllable. You can create an environment in which leaders can thrive. And this is such a foundational thing to raising the level of everything happening at the church. So we've got to turn this around and get more people engaged and create an environment that they can thrive, and the church will thrive through them.
Yeah, this one may actually be the hidden thing that's happening in a lot of churches that
I agree with you.
You may not even realize is happening in your church, and it's going to feel like a cliff. You will not realize that it's been a spiral, that you've been spiraling down. When this problem is truly manifested in your church, it will feel like you've just hit a cliff. And it's why I have talked about this topic so much, and I could talk about it for a very long time. Most churches are running head first into a leadership crisis, in that everyone who's on these keyboards, everybody who is
playing keyboards.
Yeah, could be that too. Yeah. I mean, these fundamental boards and committees and teams and so on.
Okay. Keyboards
are often older. Very few people under 50. I'm not saying zero, just very few under 50. And we have not prepared the next generation of leaders to be effective in these roles.
Yeah.
I'm not saying these people won't be there, but maybe you'll have warm bodies you can fill these boards with, but that doesn't mean they're going to be competent to serve in those positions. And so we have this huge cliff that we're facing of just not having enough, and not having enough qualified leaders on board. And just take a hard look at something like the Gideons, or some of these just civic organizations. This happened to them. All of their key folks aged out, and there is no young generation of leaders to take their place. Yeah. And they're dying. And the same thing is happening in churches. And so take stock and be careful. Look around. Yeah. See how many leaders under 50 do you have that are really competent? And then take notice and start working on it, because you don't develop a leader in 5 minutes.
All right.
So call us at malphursgroup.com/leadership-pipeline.
Well, I think this is kind of
you.
this is a bonus. This is a bonus, underneath this heading. I mean, because so many churches, they talk about pouring into the next generation, and what they really mean is children's ministry. Come serve in children's ministry and pour into the next generation. Yeah, vitally important. Please do that. But we need to be pouring into our student ministry. We need to be pouring into our young adults, our 20s, our
30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds.
And we're not. I mean, the church sometimes looks like the U.S. Congress. They're literally being propped up by people, all one foot in the grave. That's an inward focus, I think, on a personal level. The church.
Yeah. You make a good point, actually. I mean, I mentioned civic organizations. This is a society-wide problem.
Yeah,
it's not just the church. There's a real baby boomers are living longer. They've held on to power longer than would be normal in sort of the time scale of human history. They have not released authority. And I'm not saying I am by no means saying give it up. I'm saying at least prepare someone behind you.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you to give up your seat, but you better be preparing the person to sit in it when you go. And that has not happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it shows. Right. Does it not? It shows.
Totally shows. Yeah.
Look around.
Culturally, I don't think we're preparing the person 10 years younger than us, 20 years younger than us. There's not supposed to be a gap. Like the 70-year-olds aren't supposed to be, building up the 20-somethings. How come we're not closer? We should be more granular in our leadership development.
You say this as a Gen X person. Yeah, I mean, totally. What's going to end up happening is Gen X is going to get screwed on the whole thing. They're going to, these boomers will finally, be passing off. I mean, I don't want to say finally, like, get out of here. I'm just saying, when eventually they step down, now you're going to have millennials, people my age, they're going to be entering the prime of their careers in their 40s. And you're going to have all these Gen Xers who just got totally passed over. Yeah.
Because again, don't hear us say you should stop doing things. There is no retirement from Christian life. That's just, that's not the design.
This is not an ageist comment. We're just saying there aren't people behind you.
Yeah, totally. All right, man, this has been a good rant episode. We present the topic.
I can rant about every single one of these things.
I'm sorry. These are hot button issues for me and Scott this week.
But we just see it a lot. We see these same problems.
We both need a vacation. We're starting to get angry about this stuff.
Let me just put all these issues, all five of these, up on a dartboard and just throw a dart and hit one. And every church we've worked with it's one of these that's driving decline.
Yeah. All right, here you go. Here's another one. Here's another one for us to get angry about.
This is the last one, isn't
it? Ineffective at growing disciples. And this one is a hub in which spokes, come out of to make this wheel turn. Because again, this is a great commission focus right here. We're supposed to be maturing people in their faith effectively. We're supposed to be teaching people to observe or to obey everything that Christ commanded. And there's just a lot of shallow discipleship happening. Because remember, this is a positive feedback loop. If we're going to teach people to obey everything Christ commanded, we have to go back to the beginning of the previous verse, and that's to go and make disciples. So this is a self-feeding thing. And many churches are not effective at building people up, to be knowledgeable in the word, to be wise in its application, and to be sharing their faith with others, and to bringing people alongside them, and introducing them to Jesus, and beginning to teach. So we do this sometimes in just old and tired ways, and not in effective ways. The leadership thing plays into this too, Scott. How people relate to one another. I think multi-generational, intergenerational discipleship is wonderful, but so is being able to connect with your peers or people maybe just one level above you, that have more recently experienced what you're experiencing now. We need all of this. We need holistic discipleship, but we also need very strategic discipleship and effective discipleship. And you don't get effective discipleship without strategic discipleship, because you need to be thinking about the ends. What are the outcomes that I want to achieve, and what do I have to do to achieve that? And that's not it. What we have is running the same play over for decade after decade, running the same play. So
yeah, and this is a challenge for me, AJ, because I think some people hear this and go, so you're saying I need a new program? And that's missing it.
Yeah.
It's like the problem isn't the program you're running. The problem is you're better at filling a calendar than you are at helping someone be filled with the Holy Spirit. Like you're missing the point entirely. And any program can be useful when wielded. A program is a tool. It's not like I'm not handy. We've discussed this already in this episode. I don't become better at woodworking by upgrading my saw if I don't know how to use the saw.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Giving me a better set of tools or a newer set of tools or an innovative set of tools or power tools, none of that improves my ability to build things. And so I think churches sometimes hear what we're saying and think, oh, I just need new things. No, you need a different approach, and you need to understand that the tools are means, not ends. We're focused on the ends. You know, it's a really junky set of old tools in the hands of people who know what they're doing can be really effective. Mm-hmm. Jesus's programs, in as much as they existed at all, were not very sophisticated. But the results are undeniable, right? And so I think sometimes we just miss this point and we think, I got to innovate my way to success. It's like, no, you need to you need to be a little more retrograde, actually, and get back to the fundamental thing, which is the outcome.
Yeah.
And who cares what your program is, in so much as you understand that it's just a tool.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
There's my rant on that. I think it's totally a problem of misplaced focus. We're focused on the tool versus focused on what we're trying to build.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am notorious for a really sharp slice to the right off of a golf tee. Like I can miss a fairway any day. I'm excellent at missing fairways. And I had some cheap old golf clubs that I bought in the 90s, and I used to play with those things. And then my dad upgraded his clubs. He was a good player. I got like a hand-me-down, really nice driver. And I thought, man, this is going to be my ticket. When I swing this driver, this ball is just it's going to be perfect. And it went further. I'll give you that. It was the tool is capable of driving the ball further, but it still went to the right. It just made it farther for me to try to find. It didn't correct a bad swing. So yeah, you can try a different tool, but if you don't fix the fundamentals, and really, make sure that you're doing the right things right.
When's the last time you got a group of people together in a room? This is what we do when we work with churches. But when's the last time you got together with a group of people in a room and just ask, why are we even doing this? Like, what is the point of this thing? Mm-hmm. And if your reaction is, well, we can't possibly get rid of this and then you immediately jump to relational consequences rather than thinking about sort of discipleship ends, then that is all the evidence you need that your brain is in the wrong spot. You are not thinking about this in a way that is correctly oriented. And it isn't that you need to get rid of programs. It's hard to not hear that. We're telling you, right. Your programs aren't the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because you can take two churches, both have Sunday school programs for adults. One of them has, thriving people, be a thriving church with a lot of volunteers, which, by the way, is going to be an effect out of good discipleship. And then another one, and it's stale, it's stagnant, it's dying. You're like, wow, what's going on? We both have Sunday school, right? But not all Sunday schools created equal. So that's not it, because there's not,
and not all Sunday school teachers are created equal.
But that's for sure.
It's like the program's not the problem. You have a really
That's right.
ineffective leader.
Yep. You got it. You have to look
The
under
program's
the
not the
because-
problem. What are we teaching?
Yeah.
I mean, there are 1,000 variables that have nothing
That's
to
right.
do with the
Yeah.
program.
That's right. That's right. Yep. You got to get into the details. So, whew, this is an exhausting episode, Scott. Man, it really took a lot
I'm just
out
tired
here.
of seeing churches decline. It's
Man,
not
so am I.
necessary.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Hey, this was episode 207 of the old Church Revitalization Podcast. So at malphursgroup.com/207, you can go back and reflect on these. I hope you do. You know what? Bring this list to your next staff meeting, and say, let's have an honest conversation about these points. Where do we think we're at in these things? I think that would make a good conversation, and maybe be able to drive a path forward to make sure that you don't find out that you're further down in decline than maybe you even thought you were. So while you're over there on the website, click on that donate button in the upper right-hand corner, or just reach out to us on email, leadership@malphursgroup.com. Love to start a conversation with you about partnering with your church in mission around the world so that we can continue to develop resources and go be with churches that need help and help them to be able to improve in all these things too. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week.